Hello, yes, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the Baldwin Sports Media NFL podcast, sadly coming to you at the end of the 2024 NFL season. The Super Bowl is in the books. The Philadelphia Eagles are your NFL champions. The Kansas City Chiefs could not pull off their three-peat, and don't worry, we are going to be going into not necessarily a deep dive, but we will be diving into the game later because there's only there's only really one story in town. But there are a couple of off-field bits of news that we need to touch on as well. But it's the Super Bowl. There's only one place we can start. Actually, change of plan. We can start with the admin of the show, which is as simple as me saying thank you very much, as always, for listening. If you are new, then don't forget you can like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. And then don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. We are at Baldwin Sports Media on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And then on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. So feel free to give us a follow, a like, a subscribe, whatever button it is you need to press on those channels as well. And as always, if you are a returning listener, then thank you very much for following me through this, through the whole season, and just giving me, your regular support and subscriptions and whatever it is that you've done. It is always very, very much appreciated. Right. With that said, let us get on into the show. And as I said, there's only really one place we can start. It is the Super Bowl. It was a 40-22 victory for the Philadelphia Eagles. But the scoreline, as you would have seen if you saw the game, was not as close as the scoreline may suggest. The performance was pretty dominant by the Philadelphia Eagles, and yeah, have they put them? You really could make the argument that they are the best one season team that we have seen if they are able to go in and put in as dominant and complete performance that they did on the big stage, given the pressure that was on them, given who they were facing on the other side. Again, you can make the everyone talks about like the '85 Bears or the 2000 Ravens, or just those. They'll talk about like over the couple of years, like a dynasty, like the Chiefs are. But I really think you can make the case that for this one season, this was the best team that we have seen in the NFL in history. Again, offense completely stacked, working with quarterback, offensive line, running back, wide receivers, tight end, everything perfect. And even on the defensive line, dominant defensive side of the ball, rather dominant defensive line, great linebackers, and secondary, just perfect all round. Again, put this Philadelphia Eagles team up against anyone, from the past, and I reckon you've probably got them. You've got a very, very good. You've got a very, very good team. But I've been going up and down about which way to attack this, but I think the way to get around it is I've just given the Philadelphia Eagles their due in that sense. So I'm not jumping off completely with the Kansas City Chiefs, but the talk in the sports media leading up to and in the couple of days afterwards has been surrounding the Chiefs and the three-peat and the dynasty and all that sort of stuff. So that really is where we need to start. And there's only really one place to start, and that is Patrick Mahomes and his legacy, because that's another thing that's been talked about. And if you watched my TikTok, one of my TikToks rather, in the aftermath of the game, I sort of gave this point, but I can expand on it a little bit further. Here is that I don't want to see people talking about this one game as effectively legacy defining for Patrick Mahomes, and the greatest of all time debate is now over between him and Tom Brady, because yes, it is a Super Bowl loss, and that will hurt his overall record. He's now 3-2 in Super Bowls, which on a ratio level winning percentage, you know what I mean. It's not as good as Tom Brady's was, and if you want to have that as a be all end all decider, then I disagree. But let us not forget that even if you look at Tom Brady, his career was basically put into, I mean, you could really argue three stages. There was the first Patriots dynasty of the 2000s, then there was the second Patriots dynasty of the 2010s, and let's not forget, it took until the 2015 Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks for Tom Brady to win another ring, because he won one in the 2004 2005 season, but then it took a decade for him to get another one. So it wasn't as if every all the rings came at one time. There was, as I say, the first dynasty of the 2000s and the second one of the 2010s. then really you can make the argument that the third one was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the couple of years he spent there, one of which did win a Super Bowl. So even if we want to put it, let's say that this is Patrick Mahomes' first go in his career. No, say there is going to be a couple, maybe there's a couple of down years. Worst case scenario, Patrick Mahomes. The way that the sport is played, there is absolutely there is zero chance that Patrick Mahomes doesn't at least make it to another conference championship or another Super Bowl at the very least. He's just going to. He is that special. He will get the Kansas City Chiefs competing again, and he will probably get them to another Super Bowl. At which point, then, if he does win, then yeah, he's on 4 rings and he's chasing Brady down again. But again, at the age of 29, there is still a lot of football to be played in his career. Now, if Patrick Mahomes, had done absolutely nothing for a decade, then this was his run, and he's now 39. Then yes, I will hear the argument to say, yeah, he's not going to have enough time to catch up to Tom Brady, so on and so forth. But he absolutely has the chance to. And another point I brought up is I don't think he necessarily needs to pass Tom Brady in terms of rings in order to pass him in the greatest of all time discussion. Because, you know, there are people who will say, again, whether or not you want to have the argument, but there will be some people that would say and have Peyton Manning as a better quarterback than Joe Montana. Joe Montana went 4-0 in Super Bowls. Peyton Manning went 2-2. But there will be people that, when you look at their entire body of work, will say that Peyton Manning was a better quarterback than Joe Montana. So it stands to reason then. I mean, look, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. But again, there will be people who I'll just keep it to keep it to my level that will put him above the likes of Ben Roethlisberger, who's won two, Joe Flacco, who's won one. No, rings don't have to be the defining issue. They can be a big part of it, but they shouldn't be the defining issue. So even if Patrick Mahomes does end up with the three that he has, maybe if he wins another one at four, but then over the course of the regular season, the amount of wins he puts up, the fact that again, if he carries on the way he does, the worst thing of his season is, or the worst season he has, is losing in overtime of the AFC Championship game. That is the quote unquote worst that Patrick Mahomes can do. Then he absolutely still belongs in that greatest of all time debate. And when all is said and done, maybe he does surpass Tom Brady. So I don't want to. I'm certainly not one of the people that you'll see on Twitter or X or whatever, saying that this greatest of all time debate is over. It's certainly not completely over. There is still time for Patrick Mahomes to resurrect things, and if you do want to have the defining part as Super Bowl rings, then absolutely there is absolutely plenty of time for him to win another four, maybe even five. If the Kansas City Chiefs, yes, there will be some changes that they've got to go through. One of them is Travis Kelce his number one target? How long is he going to stay? There's been talks that he could retire. But the way things go, if they draft another great tight end, then that's one weapon taken care of. You look at the wide receivers, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, and a cast of other veterans like DeAndre Hopkins, like Juju Smith-Schuster, who can play their roles. Then there's absolutely a chance that they can still be the great high flying offense that they can, even if you include the running backs as well, with the likes of Isaiah Pacheco. There is still a chance for Patrick Mahomes to overtake Tom Brady. So in the greatest of all time debate, it is certainly not closed. Again, this loss does not help Patrick Mahomes, but it's not going to be something that, at least in my mind, says that the debate is completely over, like some people are. Now, again, if Patrick Mahomes doesn't win another Super Bowl, then yeah, it's going to be very hard for him to overcome that, even if he does have the absolutely great regular seasons and racks up postseason wins as well. But I'm just not in a position where I'm going to say that the conversation is over. I'm just not. So let's move on from that, and let's move on to the winning team again. This is a day where I do want to give the Philadelphia Eagles their due. That's why I started this at the start of the show. But with it being Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, you've got to mention them, I feel, first. So let us move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. And what I would say is that, as I sort of mentioned at the start, is this has the potential to be the greatest one season team that we have seen. in the NFL. What it's going to look like again, it's going to be very, very difficult to create. I personally think the dynasty with the Philadelphia Eagles, just because this is going to sound pretty bad, but there are just far too many good players on there. You know, young good players that if they carry on the way they are going to need to be paid. It's the same thing I've said with with pretty much every team is unless there are players who are willing to take less than market value, I think it's going to be very, very hard for these players for the whole team to stick around. You know, you look at how many young players there are. We'll start with the defensive line. Two absolutely star um, inside linemen of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Absolute brutes, fantastic players. Both of them are still on their rookie deals. Both of them, if they keep going on the way they're going, are going to need to be paid and are going to need to be paid big. Do they have enough to? Do they have enough wiggle room to make that work? When you also consider, let's flip it to the other side of the ball, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and whenever something is sorted out, Saquon Barkley as well. You know, his deal is for 3 years and 37 and a half, roughly, $1 million. Is that going to, if he keeps going on the way he does, he's going to want to ask for more money when he comes up for his next contract negotiation. Are you going to be able to pay that many? Again, it is a good thing. Like, yeah, they may be able to run it back next year. I think they're in a very, very good spot to do that because they've got again a lot of good young players. But eventually, everyone is going to have to be paid. I'll bring up another one on the defensive side of the ball. Josh Sweat, who very much threw himself. My vote, if I had an MVP vote, I would have given it to Josh Sweat. He absolutely was the star of that game. He is now a free agent. Is he gonna come back with a team? And if so, how much is he gonna command? Because that Super Bowl performance probably earned him an extra couple of $1 million. Again, this is something they could probably get away with for next year, maybe the year after that. But very, very long term, I do think it is going to be very, very difficult for this team to stay the way they are and keep the dynasty, not necessarily keep the dynasty, but start a dynasty in the way that the Kansas City Chiefs have done. Because they've done very, very well. Patrick Mahomes has, structured his contract in such a way that again he's been very, very team friendly as well. They've got a lot of young promising stars that are rookie contracts. That makes things cheap. Veterans who are willing to pay for a little bit less in order to win a trophy. So they've managed to make it work. The Philadelphia Eagles need to do something along the same lines because I don't see how. Again, it's a great situation to have because even if you have like seven to eight of these absolute star players, absolute A+ talent on your team, even if you lose two and you're still stuck with five, you're in a pretty good spot still in order to keep going on. But long term, do I think this is a dynasty in the making? I think it's going to be very, very tough in order to make things happen. Also, because I think if you look at the NFC as well, there are a couple of teams that are up and coming. Are they going to stick around? You talk about the Detroit Lions. Yes, they've lost the two offensive coordinators, which we will be touching on later. But on a talent level, will they still be challenging for things? You would imagine they would in their same division. The Washington Commanders had a very, very good year this year. Are they going to absolutely stunk it out in the NFC Championship game? But maybe that was just rookie nerves with Jaden Daniels or whatever. Maybe they come back and are a threat next year. Do the San Francisco 49ers sort themselves out? In which not have the bad luck with injuries that they had. They will be a threat if they can get back to some level of competitiveness. So it is going to be very, very hard for them to do. And it is going to have to take, buying into the Eagles system, if you would. Again, like people talk about buying into the Chiefs system. And again, Tom Brady with the Patriots buying into it and taking less than market value. They are going to have to make sacrifices in order to make it work. But if they do, then I do think we possibly have the next dynasty on our hands. And it comes out of Philadelphia. And kudos to them for making it work in the way they do. And also, I'll be really honest, they're a fun team. They were a fun team to watch. Now, I don't think there's anything you can necessarily say is annoying about them. I you talk about the two dynasties that have grown up that have happened in my lifetime of watching the NFL. It's the Patriots where there was there was the cheating allegations that always surrounded them, and that's why people hated. There was the dominance factor as well, but there was the fact that people hated them. The Kansas City Chiefs, for whatever reason, they just haven't. They're just not liked amongst a wide group of people. Maybe it is the Taylor Swift factor, which may go away if Travis Kelsey does decide to retire. Maybe it's the referees with the favorable calls or whatever. Whatever it is, there isn't that likability about the Kansas City Chiefs anymore. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't see America as a whole. I don't see what stops the Philadelphia Eagles from being a hated dynasty, if you will. So if they can make it happen, then kudos to them. But as I've said, it's going to be very, very hard for them to stick and make it work unless people make a lot of sacrifices. Right, and actually talking about the Eagles brings us neatly onto our next subject, which is the something that I've been promising for a while, but now that all the spots have been filled, we can finally go around the league and talk about the coaching changes in the NFL because obviously the last slot to be filled was the New Orleans Saints, and they have filled that spot with Kellen Moore, who was the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. And just before we touch on that, I don't think that's going to necessarily be a disaster for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think just because of the unique style of which they play, the fact they can go run first. I'm not saying that like it's simple, but I think with the unique skill set they have, the dominant offensive line, Jalen Hurts, a great mobile quarterback, and Saquon Barkley, I think they have the great foundations there to start with. So I don't think it's going to take massive, major changes um, for things to keep rolling along smoothly with the Philadelphia Eagles, with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, right, with that being said, let's go around the league and talk about the new appointments and what I think of them. Right, the first one will go in, I believe this is alphabetical order, but it's the order that is listed on the NFL Wikipedia pages for head coaching changes for this offseason. So we'll go in whatever order it says there. And first off is Chicago Bears with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, obviously the former offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, and obviously had great success there. My main takeaway from this is this was done purely in the hopes of making Caleb Williams work because the Chicago Bears put a lot on the line when it came to picking Caleb Williams. They could have, sent the pick away and traded away for a king's ransom. Everyone assumed that Caleb Williams is going to be the number one pick and a potential franchise-changing guy, and they took him. Even though there was some debate about whether or not he was the best quarterback to come out of the draft. Jaden Daniels, perfect example. So they really need to make Caleb Williams work. And as I've discussed many times before, the Chicago Bears just have a history of not getting franchise quarterbacks to work. They have not had a decent, proper, reliable franchise quarterback since the Otto, is it Otto Graham or Sid Luckman? Either way, it's been a while. In fact, it would be Sid Luckman because I think Otto Graham was with the Cleveland Browns. But anyway, they need to make Caleb Williams work because this was the biggest swing that they've made as a franchise in recent years, and they need to make him work. Ben Johnson, best offensive mind of the game, did wonders with the Lions. This needs to work out. If Ben Johnson can't make Caleb Williams work, then I don't think the Chicago Bears. I'm not. I joke. They should really fold as a franchise because how can you go this long without getting proper franchise quarterback play? So Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, it's all on you. Maybe this first year will be a year of figuring things out, getting a system in place. If they can see some improvements, then that's fine. I really think this is a 2026 move because that will be the year that they decide that basically it will be make or break for them because that way they can still trade him away like they did with Justin Field and maybe get something back for him. But 2026 is what this is being built for, and they need to make this work. Right, moving on, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars who appointed Liam Cohen, who was the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and who, of course, did a great job of keeping things relatively steady when Baker Mayfield, in his second year as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, did a very good job. Led one of the best entertaining offenses in the league. Did a good job. My own, and the hope is that he'll be able to again resurrect things with Trevor Lawrence. Again, not necessarily in the same vein as Caleb Williams, but I do think this is it has to work for Trevor Lawrence. Otherwise, again, what do they do? Do they make one of those big swings and say, right, this isn't working, let's move you on? Even though again they built the franchise around him, but if another one can't make Trevor Lawrence, that MVP level that we all assumed he would be when he was coming out of college, if they can't make it work, then then something's got to give. So huge job, huge job there on the offensive side of the ball rather. The Las Vegas Raiders coming up next. As I've said, I'm glad they got rid of Antonio Pierce because I never really felt confident in Antonio Pierce as an X's and O's kind of strategist when it came to being a head coach. I felt that maybe he might be able to reignite something in the rah motivating style of Dan Campbell with the Lions, but Antonio Pierce with the Raiders clearly didn't work. He was of course replaced by Pete Carroll. Now, this is a very, very interesting one because we know that Pete Carroll, whilst he is works on the defensive side of the ball and has primarily been built himself around the defensive side of the ball, has had the ability to scheme up something in order to make the quarterbacks at least relatively decent, even quite excellent. If you look at his days with the USC when it was Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, back to back, made that work. Then you go to his work in Seattle and made Russell Wilson, a pretty reasonable quarterback. And you see what's gone on after he left Pete Carroll. So there's a good marriage there that they can make it. They can make it happen. Good on the defensive side of the ball, and if they get the quarterback right, then who knows? They could really do something. Now, what they're going to do at the quarterback position, we don't really know because you look at the quarterbacks that are on the roster, and let's just say they aren't exactly, you know, they aren't exactly thrilling or enticing when you look at it. Carter Bradley, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell are the ones on the roster right now. Is that someone? Is that a quarterback room rather that you would think or you would want to move forward as a team, as a franchise? I don't really think so. So you would assume there would need to be a move there. The talk is that maybe Russell Wilson will go back. And again, you look at the pieces on the defensive side of the ball for the Oakland Raiders. There's some good pieces there that he can make it work. Max Crosby being the obvious one, but you look around as well. Christian Wilkins, I think, is a very very good player for them. Tyree Wilson, I think has a lot of potential as well. You look in the secondary, Jack Jones, I quite like. There are some good pieces there that Pete Carroll can work his magic on defensively and make it work. But again, this all comes down to: are they going to be able to get a veteran, established quarterback in the room, or again, I think that is the way they're going to have to go because this year is not the best year for quarterbacks. I think everyone pretty much knows that. It's really next year that is the big one when it comes to quarterbacks. Again, there are some players coming out, but a bit like 2021 when it was Kenny Pickett, Will Levis, and Malik Willis were the main three. Are you really enticed by that? No. So I think that's what they're going to have to do. Maybe get a bridge quarterback in. Maybe go for Russell Wilson. Maybe draft someone to develop. Maybe look late in the draft to have someone develop behind Russell Wilson, or maybe one of these another veteran quarterback, for instance. So there is potential there, but they need to get that part of it absolutely spot on. And the Raiders, not necessarily the most functional organization the past couple of years, so we'll have to wait and see. But again, I think there is potential, but they need to get things spot on. Moving on now, we go to the New England Patriots who appointed Mike Vrabel. Now, this is one that I I think this was a match made in heaven. Again, I thought that Jared Mayo was a match made in heaven for the Patriots, but I just feel like whoever was going to be taking over Bill Belichick, even though Bill Belichick never really, it didn't end the right way, but whoever followed Bill Belichick was always going to have a bit of a hard time. And Jared Mayo gave it his best. Obviously, there was a lot of growing pains. Drake May, the quarterback, the situation that happened there. Maybe they were a bit too unkind for him. But I think Mike Vrabel, I think this is really really going to work out. I really liked what he did with Tennessee, especially on the defense side of the ball and making there was some decent moves and some decent development when it came to the offensive side of the ball as well. But this is where we're really gonna see whether or not the Patriots are okay with the project. I don't think Mike Vrabel's going to be able to come in and make an instant impact. Again, it may be like an extra 1 or 2 wins from what the Patriots are able to do last year. But I do think in the long term, I really do think this is going to be really, really something. But again, I think it's gonna take a couple of years whilst the organization as a whole tries to pick itself up from the ashes of what Bill Belichick left them I say retired. He left and then has obviously gone to North Carolina now. But I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how much of the Patriots project, if you will, they allow him to have. Moving on, we move on to the New Orleans Saints and the aforementioned Kellen Moore. This I think this was the most poisoned chalice when it came to the openings, because you look at what the New Orleans Saints have to do. That is something that is going to be a total rebuild. You look at their cap space, it is not it is it is just disastrous, to say the very, very least. Heading into this year, they are $54 million in the red. Um, that is the worst in the NFL. They are going to have to do a lot of restructuring, letting people go. I talked about the project with the New England Patriots. This is another one that this is a project that is gonna there's gonna have to happen. Again, is Kellen Moore really the right man to go for it? I don't really know. I think he's a little bit too inexperienced for it. Personally, if I was the Saints, I would have gone or maybe reached out to some. I think Pete Carroll would have been a great person to go for this job. But Kellen Moore, if he can bring a lot of his offensive know-how, because he did a pretty good job with the Dallas Cowboys beforehand, before he went to the Eagles. So I think there's a lot of promise there, but that whole structure, organization, franchise is a bit of a mess. So they've got a lot of work to do. I don't think Kellen Moore's the right man to do it, but no, I hold out hope for him. I was always a big fan of Kellen Moore growing up, coming out of college with Boise State. I thought he was harshly treated. I think he should have had a little bit more of a shot as a player, so I'm rooting for him. But I think that's going to be a very, very hard task for someone to overcome. Now we move to the New York Jets, who obviously appointed Aaron Glenn. Sticking with the defensive side of the ball, I think was a bit of a bold move when it came to the New York Jets, because again the defense has been pretty solid over the past couple of years. They built a very, very good core of players, from the front line to the linebackers to the secondary. That's a pretty strong roster all the way through. So the personnel is there. It's really the offense that needed a few tweaks, but because obviously they just haven't been able to get the quarterback right. So maybe the hope is that once the defense is still manages to play towards the level that they have in the past couple of years, then hoping against hope that the quarterback situation sorts itself out with a draft pick in this year, or another veteran, because the news is that Aaron Rodgers looks to be said to be moving away from the New York Jets. I think I've said enough about Aaron Rodgers and why I think that's a great move for the Jets. So I don't need to go into that again. But similar to other teams I've talked about, again, this does come down to the quarterback and getting that right, because the defense I think will be pretty solid all the way through. But it's going to be nothing if the quarterback isn't there. So it's really going to be interesting to see how the offense looks. He's brought over Tanner Engstrand from the Detroit Lions. He was the passing game coordinator for the past couple of seasons. So again, did a very, very good job with the likes of Jared Goff. You'd like to think that maybe, again, hopefully he sprinkles some sort of magic onto whoever the quarterback is going to be. But again, at the end of the day, who is that quarterback going? Who is that quarterback going to be? Do they go young? Do they believe this is a project, or do they think with that defense and with some pretty good players on the offensive side of the ball, do they think this is a win now team, and maybe again go and get that veteran quarterback, or hope that they strike gold in the draft and manage to get someone who can have the impact of a CJ Stroud or a Jaden Daniels in their rookie year to decide to take them all the way. So I think that's going to be the major thing for Aaron Glenn as he takes over that job. And then last but not least, we go to the Dallas Cowboys, who let Mike McCarthy go, replace him with Brian Schottenheimer. I don't know. This just seems uninspiring to me, if I'm being brutally honest. Again, the Cowboys' offense in the past couple of years has been okay. It's not been great, but this really does. Again, this goes back to Jerry Jones's comments, and I know people have made fun of it in the past, but Jerry Jones's comment of being all in. Are you really all in if this is the move you're going to make and make Brian Schottenheimer the head coach? I just don't buy it. I feel very, very underwhelmed. And if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, as a fan base, again, looking at what the expectations are in America's team, and there should be a level of prestige, the fact that that is who you were able to get as your new head coach, they need to be looking a lot. They need to be looking a lot higher than that. So I think that's just a pretty disastrous decision all round from the Dallas Cowboys. Right, that brings an end to the head coaching roundup. We'll wait and see exactly how those play out and if there are any other tweaks that go along with it. But again, the thing for a lot of these teams is can they get that quarterback to click, and then we'll wait and see exactly what happens from there. Right, before we move on and we wrap up the show because we are running a little bit later than we usually like to do. As usual, the fun topic of the week. Again, it surrounds the Super Bowl and it surrounds Nick Wright, who I'm a big fan of. He's someone that I look up to in the broadcasting world, and just the way that he's been treated by his colleagues on Fox Sports One and First Things First, the show that he hosts, I think has been pretty funny. If I pretty, again, when you are as loud and as passionate and some would say as obnoxious as Nick Wright is towards the Kansas City Chiefs over the course of the year, and then this happens, you have to eat your crow. And in fairness, he's taken it with a huge slice of humble pie, and he's bought into the bits that they've done on the show quite well. So I want to give him his kudos for that. Just go check out the First Things First social media channels. They'll show you all the clips, like with the confetti and the marching band and the banners and everything. It's been fantastic that again he's not too serious that he does that he can laugh himself through that. So I give him huge credit for taking that with, as I say, with a huge slice of humble pie. Right, that is the end of this show, and that's the end of the season. But don't forget, this is the NFL. It is a year-round thing. In 2 weeks, it is going to be the combine, so there will be plenty of stories to come out around that, and there will always be news stories, free agency signings, all that sort of stuff. Maybe retirements coming out in the next couple of days as well. So we'll be able to talk and react to some of them as well. But don't forget, if you want to be able to listen to all of that, don't forget to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. And as always, feel free to like and subscribe and comment and follow and whatever it is you need to do on our social medias, which are once again at Baldwin Sports Media on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. So that's it for the podcast. That is it for the 2025 season. I hope you have enjoyed following it and following it along with me. And yeah, we'll see what happens next, but we will certainly be there to cover it and talk about it. So until next time, take care, and as always, stay safe.